All right, welcome everyone. Just make sure we're recording. Yeah, we're recording. Excellent. Welcome everyone back to the Global Lacrosse Summit. We are in our penultimate day, kicking things off today with Scott Browning. Just a couple of quick pieces of business. Just want to thank the sponsors who are helping to make this summit, this 2-week deep dive into the sport of lacrosse possible. Apex Lacrosse Events, Manitoba Lacrosse, Uncommon Fit, Major Series Lacrosse, Sticks and Picks Podcast, the PAR Team, and Bear Paw Lacrosse Events. And if you could, if you want to let us know in the Q&A section, just you can go there and just let us know where you're joining us from. That would be great. We'd love to know where everyone is coming in from. And we're very excited to have Scott Browning, who has done plenty of coaching in British Columbia and of course in Hong Kong, where he helped to, he's one of the early folks in the development of lacrosse in Hong Kong, along with the group. I know you're going to talk about that, Scott. We have people in from Portland, Oregon, from Long Island, from Winnipeg, so literally across the continent, and plenty of other spots. So welcome, Scott Browning.
Thanks, Stephen. Really great to be here. And I just want to take a moment and thank the organizers, yourself, Brad, and others who have put this platform together. I think in these difficult times, the opportunity for people to share information and continue to be focused on their passion around our sport is great. So I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this and congratulate you on doing that. And I'd also like to thank the participants this morning. Appreciate you taking some time to join us, so thank you. Just as we get started, I just wanted to make a comment. Some of the promotional material that was used last night and this morning made some references that I thought overstated my involvement a little bit in terms of being the architect of Hong Kong lacrosse and building Hong Kong lacrosse. And I didn't feel that was really fair or respectful to the people in Hong Kong who have initiated and started lacrosse there, first in the Hong Kong University, and then as a community organization that was actually established back in 1993. So there's, some great people that I have had the opportunity to meet and work with over many years that really are the people who started Hong Kong lacrosse, and I was privileged to have an opportunity to help them grow the game. So anyway, just a little bit of clarification in terms of some of that promotional stuff and paying respect to the people who've done the right work. So
absolutely, and we do have a participant on the webinar from Hong Kong. So that's very exciting. And folks, any questions you have as we go along, Scott said, go ahead, shoot them into the Q&A section, and I will interject them into the presentation at apropos moments. So we'd love to get your involvement, including the folks from Niagara Falls, Ontario. And thanks for saying that you're loving all the Global Lacrosse Summit sessions. We're having a blast putting this all together.
Great. So my topic today is about growing and developing the sport in new areas. Or areas that are looking to strengthen and improve their programs. And as I start, I just wanted to acknowledge that my philosophy and approach to this is based on my own experiences as a player and my coaching experience and leadership experience, both in sport and in business. I've had the opportunity to lead at multiple levels, at a club level, regional and provincial levels here on the west coast of Canada, as well as some time with Team Canada's U19 program, as well as then most recently in Hong Kong. So I'm happy to share my experiences and background. And in doing all of that work, I had the opportunity to benefit from the input and ideas of many other coaches who worked with me as we did those things. And there's lots of other people that are dedicated to doing the same thing. Brad has done the same in Israel, and there's many other people around the world that are doing that as well, and would be able to offer their experiences and advice to people. So, so let's dive in. So the first photo I just wanted to explain a little bit about. This is an image from 2014 in Denver. First experience with Hong Kong at not theirs, but my first experience with Hong Kong at the World Championships in Denver. And this is a group of our players celebrating with our fans on the right-hand side, our family and fans who were there supporting us. And this was after concluding, I think, the round robin portion where we had been successful in meeting our goal for that part of the tournament. And just the sort of the joy and excitement that's there amongst the players and their families is what really sticks to me as a memory from that event. And so I thought that would be a nice way to just sort of share this, because it's really about, we get into the technical details and stuff, but it's about having fun and enjoying the sport and the game. So that's what this image says to me. So our conversation today, as I say, the topic's about new and developing lacrosse communities. And I just want to go through a little bit of a flow in terms of the presentation, to talk a little bit about, as you embark on something like this, understanding the current situation, developing a shared vision, what are some considerations for implementing those, some thoughts about growing the game, for a high performance program, what I've done in different places and in Hong Kong, and then what are some of the challenges, and then we can wrap up with a Q&A. And as Stephen mentioned, we'll speak to questions along the way as well. So understanding the current situation, and I think one of the key points here is that it can vary widely. I mean, the starting point of a person's involvement or a desire from an organization to do more or do something different will be very different. So, this could be a startup, could be enhancing a program, it could be strengthening programs or putting in place a high performance program. So keep that in mind as you're looking at sort of my thoughts and my notes here, is that it may not all be relative to your situation. So, jump into the process where it makes sense. The more complex or the more people you have involved, then I think, the more process that you need to put around things. When you're having conversations with people, it can be any style. You want to make sure that you're getting input from all of the different stakeholders in your lacrosse community, whether it's players, coaches, administrators, other people that provide you with access to things and support, as well as whatever the sort of the governance structure is and where you fit within that governance structure. Full breadth of topics, not just about players, but obviously you need to look at what's the coaching development program, what's your referee or official development program. You need to sort of cover all of that, as well as your off-field officials. You need to make sure that you've got something in place for, over time developing and training your bench officials and those sorts of things. Let's see. So the other thing about sport environment considerations, one of the things I'm getting at there, I think a little bit about, is what's the community, what's in the community, and where does your sport, where does lacrosse fit in terms of facilities? What facilities are available? What is the placement of lacrosse in people's lives? Where does sport fit? And that was sort of, I guess, sort of one of the realizations, or one of the things that I realized in Hong Kong when I started back in 2013 and 2014 was where sport fit. Coming from a North American situation, sport in young people's lives and in families' lives is pretty important. And then it takes a high priority around family, education, and career and sport. And they sort of compete for number 1, 2, 3 at times. Whereas in other countries and other environments, sport doesn't necessarily sit up in that top 3. So you just need to be aware of that. Where is your sport priority from a broader community perspective, as well as from your athlete's perspective? Let's see. So then also looking around the sport environment, what other partnerships can be considered? Whether it's with other like organizations, where can you share facilities, that sort of thing. So those are all the different aspects of understanding your current situation. And then you may, and again, this goes back to sort of where, how complex or how many people are involved, but you might want to, make sure you document the situation. And I just listed a couple of things there that are different analysis tools. A SWOT analysis is a strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat analysis. If you've got a group of people that are having this discussion, getting input from those 4 focus points can be valuable in looking at opportunities. There's balanced scorecard, there's other types of tools. So anyway, so those are some of the points around understanding the current situation, Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of building a vision of where you want to go, and I think it's really important that you or your group, those that are leading this initiative of growing the game, are clear about what your vision is. Whereabouts are you trying to move to? Where are you trying to sort of move the needle to? So you want to draw on best practices and past successes, your own and others, things that have been in the community. As I said before, you want to make sure you involve your key stakeholders to get that shared vision, but also ownership of that vision. You want to make sure that you ultimately are communicating that vision so that you get people on board. Right down to your athletes, to all those other stakeholders of officials and coaches and such. So, and some of those stakeholders, they could be your government or community officials that you're trying to work with around facilities or different types of financial support, those sorts of things. So, having a vision and a way of explaining what you're looking to do is important. And I think it's important to sort of be bold, be optimistic, and stretch. I think with that in mind, then you will. You may articulate something that is far enough out there that, you might not achieve it in a short period of time, but by stretching for that, you're going to get closer than you would have if you had set something a little bit more cautious. So the approach I've always taken.
The old saying that a man's reach should exceed his grasp.
Yes. Yeah. And then I think developing a roadmap with targets. So that, not only have you got this vision, but you've got a plan as to how you're going to achieve that, which gets into, so your vision is a bit of the what are we going to do? And then your plan is going to get at the sort of the who's going to do it, when is it going to happen, what help or resources or people or such do you need in order to do it, and when do you need those, which gets into sort of the how.
And Scott, I was thinking we didn't really go too much into it, but I thought, given you're talking about, drawing on your best practices, on your past successes and that, do you want to give a little more background of your playing career and where you've coached? And I know you're in Victoria now, but just give us a little bit more of where you're coming from that you're drawing on.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, thanks, Stephen. So, I'm here in Victoria in British Columbia in Canada. And so this is where I like to say I started when I was 5 and I'm not done yet. So I'll let people do their own math. And so, I grew up playing box lacrosse until I was 20. Didn't even know what field lacrosse was at that time. Played within the Shamrock organization here in Victoria, within our Sea Sprays and Waxman field lacrosse program, and won a number of national titles. And I was fortunate enough to play for Canada at the Worlds in 1990 in Perth. And as I was continuing to play up until I guess about 40 or so, I started coaching around 30, and coached various youth programs and did stuff here locally within the club. Got involved in the 90s and coached Canada's U19 team at the Worlds in Adelaide, and continued to be involved with that a bit. And then was coaching Shamrock box lacrosse at the intermediate level and junior level in the 90s and early 2000s. I did our Team BC under 16 program in the 2000s to 2013 with Travis Gillespie, and we were successful. We actually won 3 straight national titles from 2011, 12, and 13. at the U16 level, so beating Ontario 3 times in a row. I don't think that sat very well with people. Yeah, so I did that, and then actually one of my former players, Jordan Westpratt's a school teacher in Hong Kong, and he was involved with the Hong Kong lacrosse community, and he reached out to see what I was doing. So on behalf of the organization, and that was my intro into working with Hong Kong. So I've just wrapped up doing that. This was to be my last year, finishing out with under 19 Worlds in Ireland in July, and then our men's qualifying tournament at the end of September, qualifying for the Worlds in 2022. So those things over the summer were canceled and postponed and stuff. So anyway, so my career there came to a bit of a quick and short end, but really enjoyable experience, and I'm glad to be able to share some thoughts about that.
It's interesting for me, Jordan Westpratt. I'd met him at the E-Box.
Yeah.
And then one night I was playing in my Borough Boys League, which is like a Masters League. It's not. I mean, it's not. We don't have any checking. We don't have refs or anything. We just go around and play. And it's a lot of fun. And there was a guy on the team, and he had his helmet on. I didn't see him beforehand. So we get out, and he's like, "Hey, Stamper, how's it going?" And I'm pretty easy to spot because I'm 6'9". And it took me a bit until we were on the bench, and he took his helmet off. I'm like, "Oh, it's Jordan." But he came out and played with us a bit. He's a very good player. And one of the interesting things I'm sure we'll get to later is he kind of came on board as, a lot of teams, a lot of nations, as they're building their programs, will have one or more Canadian expats involved or Canadians involved. And he really played a big role for you early on. And I thought it was interesting. You just look at the sheer numbers and see how other players took on such huge roles. And he kind of stepped into a supporting or complementary role, which is part of, I know what you're aiming for. And I just wanted to kind of set the tone for that as we head forward to see the growth that has happened in Hong Kong lacrosse.
Yeah. Yeah. Move ahead.
Yeah, let's go.
Sure. Okay. So things to consider when implementing programs in a sort of a new or developing area, when you're trying to expand or whatever, is the program history. So how big of a change are you trying to make or to implement? And how best do you go about that? Because change takes time. And so this gets a little bit at sort of the culture and expectations of your participants. So, if you're looking to make a significant change or improvement, then I think this is where communication really is important. Making people aware of what you're looking to try to do, so that you've got their support and excitement really about it. So, make sure you understand the program history and, what is it that you're doing that's going to be significant, how significantly different is it, and will it be accepted or not?
And Scott,
yep.
And you're probably going to get into this, but I'm curious, when you talk about that, you've been quite clear that, there were people on the ground in Hong Kong making things happen, building this program, and then they brought you in to help with it. And I'm curious, when obviously they're looking to you for your expertise to help get to the next level, but so how do you balance figuring out what the goals are, what the next steps you're trying to implement are? I assume they're looking to you for some guidance in that area, but obviously they have things that they want to achieve.
Yeah. So I think it's important to have, obviously conversations about that, and open and trustful and respectful conversations about that. In the case of when the folks in Hong Kong contacted me, initially it was to help prepare the men's national team for the Worlds in Denver. So that was the initial engagement. So it was pretty clear what they were looking to do. And through the process of being in Hong Kong and doing that, and then understanding through conversation, what was the current situation, and, what is it that that's been happening up to this point. We had conversations about, so where do we want to go from here? I mean, it was probably 3 months before the July 2014. So, the conversations were, this is great. What are we going to do after? Like, because the last thing you want to do is build up and then stop. So we were already having conversations about, so, what comes next? How do we keep moving this forward? So they were looking for thoughts and input about how to do that. And so I was providing recommendations about both high performance program, and basically the goal and the objectives were about improving the caliber of play in Hong Kong and improving rankings. Rankings within the region and internationally at the Worlds in terms of where Hong Kong sat. On the men's level, the team Hong Kong had represented at the Worlds starting in 2002, and tended to finish in the latter section of the rankings. And in 2014, we made a jump. And so I think that excited people and wanted to continue to do more of that. So, to your question, yes, it's a balance in terms of suggesting what is it you need to do. And I mean, one of the biggest things I said is we need to change the culture. You need to get more serious in terms of putting more time and commitment and making this more of a priority within the lacrosse community. So other things for implementation considerations, thanks, Stephen, was access to resources. So you need to build things to suit your situation, and your situation includes, equipment and facilities. What do you have? What are your numbers like in terms of players? Are there other coaches? Is there an officials program? Those sorts of things. And in Hong Kong, there was translation support if needed. One of the fellows I used to coach with, Travis Gillespie, he's coaching in Taiwan, and there isn't the English base there amongst the players, and so he's got translation support. So other things to think about when you're helping to grow the game internationally, and then drawing on other technical expertise where required. For the life of me, I'm not going to be a very good goalie coach. So, I brought in people to help me with that. Think about the resources that you might need. As I mentioned, build to suit the situation. I remember at the beginning, I was looking to go 3 and 4 times a week. I wanted practices to start about 6 o'clock after people got off work. And then I quickly learned that wasn't really reasonable in Hong Kong. And it comes back to sort of where does sport fit a little bit, because for young people looking to, either complete their education or establish themselves in the workforce, that's very time consuming. And people work 6 days a week. They start between 8 and 9 in the morning, and they're not done until 7 o'clock at night, depending on the occupation that you're in. And if your boss says, no, we need to work later tonight, then you do. And so a 6 o'clock practice was not going to happen. So, we often, we'd start practice at 8 o'clock or 8:30, partly because everybody else all the other sports are in the same situation. So everybody's competing for that 7:30, 8 o'clock, field time or floor time. So, just understanding the demands and priorities on your athletes, as well as and their availability. So, be mindful to that and learn what's going on in their lives so that you can provide something that meets their desire to improve, but is also doable in terms of the challenges within their life. So, I think the other thing to think about from an implementation perspective is building community awareness. And Hong Kong Lacrosse has done a really good job of this over the last 3 or so years of maybe, I'm sure longer than that, but of making the community aware of what your sport is. Because, here in North America, and I'm sure there's definitely, areas in North America that don't know what lacrosse is, but certainly around the world, there's areas where you're introducing something that is so foreign and so new that on one hand, there's lots of interest. It was, oh, what is that? And so Hong Kong Lacrosse has done a good job of utilizing things like, stories in local media, going to schools and sites, fairs, exhibitions, that sort of stuff, and doing demos at all of those sorts of things to help create awareness of what the game is. the players in Hong Kong, they'd be on the transit system with their lacrosse sticks, and people are staring at them going, is that a fishing net? There's lots of stories of that. So, it's a case of, building community awareness, building relationships at the local government or sport organization level, so that you've got relationships there and you can, work at getting access. Within regional and international community, one of the things that I've really enjoyed over the period of time that I've worked with Hong Kong is all the different people that I've gotten to meet and know around the world that are involved in doing the same sort of thing in different communities. And those relationships go a long way to helping everybody develop and grow their sport. So in terms of creating events and opportunities for people to play and compete and enjoy the sport that they love. And it's in particular important when it comes to competition. Within Hong Kong, one of the things that over time it came is, the sort of the top 20 players in Hong Kong didn't have anybody to play. We needed help from within the region and internationally to get the type of competition and challenge, and it was readily available to us just outside of Hong Kong, where we would be able to continue to get better. And then I think the other thing is obviously be flexible and adjust as necessary, which is pretty straightforward, but I think important that you're mindful of that. Any questions there, Stephen?
Nope, none at the moment. We did have another Winnipegger chime in, so we have some multiple Winnipeggers.
Oh, good. People are doing good things there.
Mm-hmm.
The other sort of philosophy or thing about growing the game that I think is important is around welcoming all and build a community, so that you're strengthening your community in numbers, and there's a place of involvement for everybody, and look to have different opportunities for people at different interest levels or different commitment levels, and ultimately it'll come down to different athleticism and skill levels as well. But that could involve things like having startup programs. If you're starting a program in a brand new area, you're probably really having experience days. You're having, come and throw the ball around and learn about what the game is, type of thing, and building up to recreational programs. In different areas, you're probably starting out as an adult you're probably dealing with adult learners, and then getting into the youth programs. So, be mindful of that, you want to have different opportunities for different people, and that you should be moving towards something that is your top level, whatever top is for that particular area and place and time in terms of the developing of the game. So some form of a competitive or high performance program. The other thing obviously is getting it into the youth. I mean, there's the whole athlete development model and the pyramid and all that sort of stuff where, you're looking to have and building a youth program. And again, in Hong Kong, they've done a good job of getting into the schools and having, experience days. Some of them are a little bit sort of one and done. Others have been more sustainable. And last year, and it would have been bigger this year at about this time actually, is there's been a high school tournament championship involving, I think there was 12 boys and 10 girls teams at the high school level last May in Hong Kong championship, which was great. So it's important to get into the schools and to develop your own youth programming as well. The other thing about this is around, I guess, sort of, champions of change. So, if you've got people within your lacrosse community that can help you sort of sell that vision or explain that vision or share that excitement with your program. I think that's important, so that they're in a position to help recruit more people, help to support the delivery, etc. And I think it's also really important that there's resident leaders. So, whether it be my example or, there's lots of examples of North Americans who are doing great things around Europe and different places. And ultimately it's important that, that's really valuable. And you spoke to, that example of people that are helping to provide some expertise within the lacrosse teams and communities. But you need people that are there on the ground, that are living there, that are going to be the owners of those programs and organizations going forward. So, figure out who those are and make sure, help support those people as well. Let's see.
I think you might have skipped over the referee official development, moving in line with athletes, which is such a big one that does tend to get overlooked, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And again, this was, this is an area that is really important, because ultimately you can't play the game without that support. And it's important that those people are also getting good development opportunities, whether you're providing them with, teaching and support from experts in those areas, and as well as having your local officials get opportunities to work games that are at a higher level than what's normal, or what they're experiencing. So an example might be, officials in Hong Kong in 2013 and 2014, as I was introducing different concepts and style of play, I had to explain to the referees that was okay. This is the way the game's played. Yeah. And that, this is type of contact that we need to be able to do. And those sorts of types of things. So, and they did a great job of moving along. I was fortunate and able to have a number of Canadian officials come over in 2014 to the first Hong Kong Open, and they held training and mentorship programs, and the whole referee community is fantastic in terms of supporting and developing referees internationally. And so a number of our referees and officials have gotten opportunities to ref and officiate games within the region and at World Championships now. In terms of coaching development, it's the same thing, is, bringing along coaches. Many of our young men and women in Hong Kong that have had an opportunity to play at a higher level with some strong coaching experience, they've now moved into coaching some of our youth and development programs, which is really important. They're passing along the knowledge and experience that they've gained from international coaches that have helped elevate the caliber. So thanks for looping me back to that one, because I had skipped over that.
Yeah, no worries. It's interesting with the coaching side too, that when you get guys and girls, men and women, coaching while they're playing, I just actually saw a quote somewhere, the best way to learn how to do something is to teach it. And that's totally in line with my experience from rowing in particular, where I was always a sweep rower. People who don't know anything about rowing, you either have one oar, which is a big oar, and you go to one side, or you scull and you have two oars, one in each hand. I was always a sweeper, and then I was coaching sculling. I wasn't a very good sculler. I was coaching sculling, and when I went back after a while of coaching it and actually sculled, I couldn't believe that I was better after not having actually done it for a while. But the coaching makes such a big difference, and it's the same for any sport, any circumstance, right?
Yeah. It's I found a number of times where, and I think I've got it noted on a different slide, but it's sort of, almost sort of expect the unexpected question, because I, one of the things that I needed to do was to correct a lot of, bad mechanics and understanding of the game and stuff. And so, I spent a lot of time on, and you need to continue to spend a lot of time on fundamentals. And there's things that you just sort of take for granted, or in my case, I learned it 40 years ago, and it just sort of comes naturally, and you got to stop and think about it and explain, well, why am I doing that? Or how do I do that? So yeah, coaching makes you really sort of break it all the way down to the individual aspects of things so that you can then explain it to people. Simple things around ground balls and where to place your foot, those sorts of things. So the other point on here that I had was around paying it forward, and just some examples of that, and I think people would understand it, but it's just sort of in terms of helping to support the growth of the game at the broadest level. So that's, players in Hong Kong or players, wherever that are, giving back and helping to teach the young players, or teach coaches mentoring other coaches, that sort of thing. But I think it also, works at another level. And that was just a couple of examples is, in 2015, we were at the Asia Pacific Championships in Bangkok, in Thailand. And Malaysia was there with a team of a few expats and a bunch of local people from within Malaysia, but they didn't have enough equipment. And so young fella named Jesse Kemp from Up Island here was in Malaysia working and involved with the lacrosse community, and he heard that I was in Hong Kong, so he reached out. And we had some extra helmets and equipment. So we brought them with us and we loaned them to Malaysia for that championship so they could actually participate. Funny aside is that when we got the helmets back, they had a whole bunch of Malaysia stickers on them, but that we had to peel off. But, just sort of supporting each other to have great experiences. In a couple of the world championships, through my connections with Team Canada, we had some shared practices or drill sessions and stuff, and our guys were just over the moon to be able to have that opportunity. So, whether it's paying it forward by sharing equipment or giving equipment or helping to provide memorable experiences, I think that's an important aspect of what we're trying to do here. Right? It's not just about the X's and O's and about, how to throw the ball and those sorts of things. It's about, sharing our passion and enjoyment for the game.
And it's great you talk about that, paying it forward, and it really does move on all around. I mean, I remember going over to, I guess it was last year when I was going to Prague, perhaps. I got some messages from Brian Whitmer over in Czech Republic saying, "Hey, can you bring a bag of gear?" I was like, "Sure, I'll just put my stuff and carry on. That's fine. No problem." So I had somebody meet me at the airport and go through and check, so I can say, yes, I've checked the bag, and bring literally a couple of bags of sticks and shafts and heads and helmets and gloves and whatever they'd been able to collect in the area, and they just gave it to me, and off we go. And I'm getting used to traveling pretty light, but I was definitely not traveling light on that one with the massive bags of gear. But it happens all over the place. People just so generous to pass on their gear. One of my favorite stories is actually, it's not even just at the level of some of the newer countries. I still remember the 2015 World Championships in Onondaga, and Mike Poulin, playing for Czech Republic, had finished his the Czechs were playing their last game without any of their Canadians on the floor. They played all Czech lineup, and England had played. And when we saw England play Canada, they put Elliot Pugh, their backup goaltender, in, and he had basically hockey uppers for his, and it was so strange to see because his lower half was wider than his upper half. And we were really nervous for him with some of these guys shooting at him. And the next game, he comes out for warm up and he's got full uppers. And I actually had Mike Poulin calling, I believe it was that game you were saying, I was talking to Mike Poulin, and they told me Mike Poulin had given him, because he was done playing, he wasn't playing the last game, so he gave Elliot Pugh his uppers from the previous NLL season. And it was so touching, but you see that playing out again and again in the international community.
Yeah, no, there's tons of stories like that. I mean, Christian Del Bianco with the Roughnecks, he donated a set of uppers to me to take to Hong Kong a couple years ago. We were starting up the box program, and I put out a call, and through a connection, we got a hold of that stuff. And I had other examples of guys here in Victoria when I was starting box that were coming out with, shoulder pads. Kidney pads was the one, rib pads, kidney pads, so yeah, I was doing the same thing. I was lugging 2 and 3 extra bags over to Hong Kong with me as I was heading. So yeah, that's
honestly,
all part of.
Yeah, so many times the hardest part isn't getting the gear. People are so ready to give it. It's getting it across, right?
Yep.
Getting it, transporting it.
Yeah, I couldn't carry those bags with me on the transit system.
No.
On the other side. In terms of high performance program, and some of the things I think that are sort of key attributes around that, and just in terms of context, and I mentioned earlier that I'd done some work with regional program and our Team BC program. So within the Team BC, when I got involved in 2010, if I remember correctly, it had been sort of a all-star team type of approach that where the group would get together for a few months and go to a national championship. And working with folks at BC Lacrosse, we decided to make it more of an annual program, more of a true development program, where there was regular ongoing training and competition with a group of athletes that ultimately then would do two things: go to a national championship at the U16 field level, as well as go to recruiting events, as these are top level athletes that were looking for their opportunities to further their education and play lacrosse at school. And so we developed a model that is probably obviously borrowed it or stole it off somebody else, but that had a number of important aspects to it, and is very similar to and than what I implemented in Hong Kong. So we called it our high performance program. And when I talked about understanding the nature of the change that you're making, so for this was a big step up. We were expecting a lot more from participants. So in order to be involved in this program as a prestigious program, we laid out a whole bunch of expectations, what the goals were, and what the requirements were to be in the program of people. And we actually held tryouts to be in the program. And people needed to meet those conditions around, attitude, coachability, attendance, participation, commitment to getting better, all of those sorts of things on an initial basis, but also on an ongoing basis to stay in the program. And so we raised the bar, I guess, is what you could think of it as. And we provided skills training and a lot of skills training. I mean, it was a lot about fundamentals. And the heading high performance program, and a number of people asked that question over the years was, what's your definition of high performance? Well, high performance is relative to where you are. I mean, would this high performance program meet that criteria somewhere else? No, but we grew and developed the program up to a higher performing level. So we had skills training. We worked on lacrosse IQ. We provided and required strength and conditioning training. We did nutrition stuff with them. Had sports psychologists involved with us in 2014 and thereafter for a while within our program. We provided regular evaluation and feedback. I think it was in 2015. We implemented some individual goal setting. So I asked athletes to think about, what are the 2 or 3 things that you're going to get better at, and how are you going to do that? And so we had people document that individually in terms of an individual goal setting exercise. So if somebody needed to get stronger, well, what are you going to do? How often are you going to do it? If somebody needed to, and the majority of them needed to work on their stick skills. So, well, what are you going to do? How often are you doing wall ball for how long? And so we had, just sometimes the process of writing down those plans and being accountable, yourself accountable to those plans. Sure, I met with them and we talked about them, but really they were developing a plan for themselves to hold themselves accountable to get better. Through that process of doing that, I think that, that helped people then improve. And it helped us with changing the culture and changing the nature of the lacrosse, the competitive lacrosse community in Hong Kong. one of the things that I think is important when you're thinking about a high performance program, and it's, you know, it's this open to the community sort of thing, is, you know, seek athletes and character, and then and continue to develop skills, um, and because I think, it can be very attractive to go the other way in terms of, you know, seeking just skills. And then, you know, sometimes then you've got to deal with some of the, you know, maybe it's commitment or maybe it's work issues or whatever. But, you know, not taking care of the character people and supporting that as a priority or as an important aspect, I think can come back to hurt you in the long run. We had regular and consistent training schedules, so we were training 3 times a week, typically 2 of those on the field or the floor, once in the gym. We had a strength and conditioning coach that was available to us. And during this program, I mean, we focused on fundamentals and more fundamentals. You know, stick skills and the ability to handle the ball are, I mean, that's, you know, that continues with you right up to the top levels. You know, top level players still work on their stick skills. So, you know, keeping them sharp and that sort of thing. So, you know, these guys and girls put a lot of time into working on fundamentals. And that's one of the things that's helped us, you know, grow and get better.
We do have a question pertaining to this area, asking what's the youngest age or what's a good age to start involving kids in a high performance program and developing towards these goals?
In the context, I think it depends on your overall lacrosse community and what domestic programs exist. So this is I'll take this question and maybe use that to sort of mention a couple points. So it depends on whether there's a domestic program. So in Hong Kong, there is a domestic programs, but I would refer to them as sort of recreational leagues where there's the university program. And so the university program's obviously not available to the younger players. And the recreational leagues are, you know, typically the teams are not coached, and it's, you know, the frequency is not there. So it was important for us in this context that if we wanted to get better, our players needed to play more, and they needed better instruction, and they needed to work, you know, to work on things, and that wasn't going to happen in a domestic program environment. You come to different North American areas, and there's lots of good, strong domestic programs and leagues, and that is going to be the best development for people at a younger age. So I think it varies. It depends on what's available to people. So I think the question was, what's the youngest age? Mm-hmm. If the person's already been playing for a while, it could be 12 and 13 years old. I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, it could be 12 or 13 years old if they're ready for it and the community's ready for a quote unquote high performance program, which with these types of expectations. But that's assuming that this is what they're doing, that there's not, that, like, this isn't sort of part of their lacrosse commitment. This is their lacrosse commitment. You know, if, you know, I think at that young of an age, I mean, they're, you know, they should be playing within their community and playing within, you know, their team, if there is those domestic programs.
And I guess it could be a partial, I mean, like you said, you've got to be committed, but you can also start to introduce some of these concepts and introduce the, you know, the strength and conditioning, the nutrition, some of the skills work with younger kids, recognizing that that you're not going to really get into the high performance area until you get into the later stages of, and there's actually something available for you to do. Yeah.
I mean, I'll think about the Team BC program. So this is under 16, so grade 10, grade 11, high school kids, and they were, you know, playing either good club field lacrosse or box lacrosse. So we had an ongoing program, but we met one weekend a month, you know, and we had to work obviously around those domestic programs. So, our high performance program within the Team BC organization, we had to work around those schedules. So it wasn't, it's, as you say, it sort of supplemented it for those that were interested and suitable to be in that program.
Perfect. And the person who asked the question did reply and say, thanks for the answer. And 12-13 seems logical that they're seeing a push to get, 7 and 8 year olds out into into high performance programs, which it's like in any sport, people want you to start focusing and becoming a specialist early. And
Yeah.
I'm against it.
Yeah. And, and the other thing is that, the playing multiple sports. And I mean, it seems to be a continual struggle to get people to appreciate that, don't specialize too young. I mean, play multiple sports. I mean, everybody, you see lots of testimonials from, professional athletes and stuff saying, no, I grew up playing this and that and, other sports and stuff. And those are so true. The crossover between, in my case, I played, competitive basketball and lacrosse. There's so much crossover between those two sports. And, you don't burn out. So, in the case of the high performance program within Hong Kong, these athletes are at an older age, anywhere from 18 up to 30, 32, 33 years old. I mean, they've chosen lacrosse at that stage. But no, people should be playing multiple sports, which means you can't be in a high performance program like this 12 months a year, because when would you have time to do the other one? So, yeah. The other thing that was really important for us was competition, because you can train and train and train, and you don't get better without, competing. And so we did that in a number of ways, which was just, competing within our own training sessions, whether it be drills that had competing environment to them or scrimmages, that sort of thing. And then we also developed a competition against the group of expats, and maybe this is a good time to sort of bring that in. In Hong Kong, I mean, there was a community of, it's a financial hub, and there was a number of individuals with lacrosse background and experience that were working in the finance industry in Hong Kong, and were involved in the lacrosse community in differing ways, but they weren't in the high performance program. I mean, it was open to everybody, but we encouraged local Hong Kongers. That was our focus. And so as we were developing and I was looking to challenge our players, I started to throw games together. I got all these expats out, and we would play games against a group of athletes that maybe, they're committed. Their time of being sort of a fully committed lacrosse player was in the past, but their skills and ability and their IQ made it such that they were able to compete with us too good at times, for sure. But we would compete against that group, which helped. It gave that expat group a great opportunity to come out and play a game games that they enjoyed. It gave them a chance to help give back to growing the lacrosse community in Hong Kong, and fundamentally it helped our players get more experience and more play. So that was a local example, and we did that within leagues, and I set up special exhibition games so that we could do that. And over time, and I think this is attributable to two things. One is we got better. So over time, what was initially sort of lopsided losses became even games, which then became strong HPP wins over a number of years. And that was through our improvement and through just sort of changing dynamics of the expat community within Hong Kong, either guys getting older or guys leaving or whatever. So, times changed and that nature changed, but trying to get competition close to home on a regular basis is important for your athletes to get better, and it's also a lot more fun. So that's important. And then competition locally or internationally, and I already spoke to this a little bit in terms of finding ways to get games. So, we've got a good relationship with the folks in Taiwan, connections with Japan, out of Hong Kong, and trying to grow the game, within the Southeast Asia area with, with other countries. So, there's different tournaments that have popped up, starting in 2014. Hong Kong developed the Hong Kong Open, which has become really the marquee tournament in the region on an annual basis. And, the level of competition there is good. Each of the teams and countries will, have a number of expats, and a number of people that others from within their community. A number of teams are bringing in North Americans for the tournament. And so the quality of that tournament is getting much better. And I know the organizers are, we've been looking, here's a little plug, we're dying to have a European team or a North American team come to that tournament. And help us to just sort of raise the bar a little bit more, in terms of the quality of play there, and to show the community what the next level up is. So, and that's on both the men's and the women's side. I mean, obviously I speak more to the men's side, but, the women's community in Hong Kong is also strong. And, right now they're getting ready for their Women's World Championship up next summer. So, so competition is really the point that I wanted to make there. Challenges. And this is probably a little bit mostly focused on Hong Kong, but I think a lot of this will apply, internationally, or it's just things for people to think about in their situation. So think about these as themes that could apply. So the first is recruitment and retention. And, because, without a strong base of players, then your overall program strength isn't going to achieve perhaps what you're looking for. And then, retention. So in the Hong Kong context, we've been working hard at this for many, many years, and we've grown up to, I think we might be between 1,500, 2,000 players when you count university, some of the schools, the adult leagues, those that are participating in the high performance programs, and representative teams. And a lot of work has gone into that, and that's still a relatively small community when you think that there's 8.5 million people in Hong Kong. So I think that the challenges of getting into the schools, and this goes to a little bit of the culture. Where does sport fit within the community, and how difficult it can be to introduce something new, and a new sport. So, a lot of great progress, and it's going to continue to take a lot of effort. One of the things that I think about on the recruitment and retention side, and this is really particular to this year, this has been a really difficult year in the world with COVID-19, but in Hong Kong also with social unrest and protests and stuff that are going on there. It has been a very disruptive year. And so, before I finished up a couple of months ago, we were starting to talk about, so what's next fall look like? It's going to take a lot of work to get programs back going again, getting new interest and not losing people. So, that's just a bit of a sidebar about Hong Kong's situation. Retention, and again, depending on where you are, players, I guess, call it playing career in North America, and it's not universal by any stretch, but in North America, people may tend to obviously start earlier and play longer into a later age. And one of the things that we ran into, was players achieving an opportunity to play on the Hong Kong team at a world championship, and then refocusing on work and career and having to quit lacrosse. Because and this is at the age of 21, 22 years old, just getting started, just had their first great experience, and they're still learning, and then they're not able to make the commitment anymore. And so we had a number of instances of some people with a lot of upside that I was really excited about that couldn't continue to play. And so that's really, disappointing and sad in respect of them. I mean, it was a a choice that was hard for them, but the work demands in that environment are that, if you want to get established in your career, that's got to become your priority, and it takes up a lot of time. So anyway, so retention and recruitment, I think, are challenges anywhere in any context. Depth, we've done, on both the men's and women's side within Hong Kong, we've done a lot of great work, but it, is the depth really there? So last April, I'll use as an example, last April with our men's program, we did two things. We were preparing for the World Indoor Championships in September in Vancouver. So we took a team to the E-Box and Alex Hrubeski tournament in Prague in April, which also happens to be the same time as the Hong Kong Open. So I was fortunate to have the support to be able to do this. But I had two different teams going in different places. I had a team playing in the Hong Kong Open and a team playing in E-Box the same weekend. And then a group of 5 or 6 of us flew to Prague and played in Alex Hrubeski. And so the depth of players and their ability to free up time from work and those sorts of things, is still somewhat limited. Like we didn't have sort of the top level, we didn't have a separate sort of top level players in field and a top level players in box. There's a lot of guys that are playing both that are still the top players, which is true anywhere really. And so, program depth goes to capacity to do things. So, I think in one of my earlier slides, I talked about, build things to suit the situation. We stretched ourselves there in terms of being able to do that. I mean, we were successful in all areas and stuff, but it really stretched us to be able to do that. So just be mindful around depth and as it being a challenge. Sufficient facility access. In Hong Kong, the lacrosse is such a new, unknown sport. We are pretty low. I mean, the association's done a really good job of getting, especially most recently, about getting us access to different facilities. But it's like anywhere else, you've got to sort of fight to get your access and be able to have sufficient in order to be able to train if you're trying to grow your programs, then obviously you need more facility time. And so that can be a challenge. In Hong Kong, there isn't a lacrosse arena. There isn't a lacrosse box. We used a small inline hockey facility to play box lacrosse at a YMCA. There's a number of arenas that have ice in them in malls, but the ice never comes out. So, and they're not all full size either. So, another challenge could be, I've spoken to this a little bit already, but is player availability. How frequently can you train? What time of day can you train at? What's their career length? I found within our high performance program, as some, players were not able to continue to compete, the career length was so short that we needed to keep going back and recycling. It almost felt like we were starting all over again. Not with everybody, because there's a very committed group of 15 to 20 guys that have been involved in that program probably, for 5 or 6 years, and they've gotten much, much better. The next group down, it feels like we're back 3 or 4 years. Career length and player availability. I've spoken to access to next level competition. Within Hong Kong at both the men's and the women's level, we need to play somebody else in order to get challenged. And there's lots of challenge out there. It's just making it work.
So if you're a European or Canadian team and you want to go to the Hong Kong Open, get in touch.
Yep. And then resources, human, equipment resources, financial resources. Those are all, obviously challenges.
Or US. I skipped the US.
Yes, I mean, there's been conversations. Last year, there was a men and women's team from Japan that came, and that helped to raise the caliber. Mm-hmm. April's, typically not a good time for people it just doesn't work schedule-wise or season-wise with Japan. But Chris Gino and his group of I think it was KO University on the women's side that came, you know, they made it work, and it really helped the tournament, and I know they had a good time. So those are sort of my thoughts, and I'm you know, really open to and encourage questions, because I think, you know, with the questions we've already had, we've delved into some areas that I think were helpful.
Yeah, I think they were great questions. I really enjoyed the presentation. And, if there are a couple of questions, we can get to them. We are just over the hour. We're doing all right. There's Scott's contact information, Instagram and things. And I want to thank everyone who joined in. I think it was very informative, and it's the kind of session where people can take things and directly apply it to what they're doing. So I think that's fantastic. And certainly, Scott, appreciate you coming on. I always enjoy running into you around the world and all the spots that we've run into each other. And yeah, and our guest from Hong Kong said, thanks so much for all the talks, and Hong Kong misses you, Scott.
The last comment I'll make for folks that are tuning in today and watching in the future, whatever, is, you know, be creative and stick to it, because ultimately, what are we trying to do? We're trying to make a difference, and you are making a difference. So
Love it. Good
work, everybody.
All right. Thanks so much, Scott. Thank you, everyone, for coming on. I'm Stephen Stamp. It's been a pleasure bringing you another webinar in the Global Lacrosse Summit. We've got 4 more today. We've got 4 more tomorrow as we wrap things up. It's been terrific. A couple of weeks, lots more to come. So make sure you check out all the rest, and we will see you all soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Stephen.